Greetings, fellow armchair Imagineers. Tiki here.
And Jacob Wile too.
And welcome to another episode of Tiki's Universe. That's right, it's the show where we cover a myriad of animated programming, including Star vs. Forces of Evil, DuckTales, woohoo! Big Hero 6 when it eventually comes back around to a series. And Jacob, like every so often, Dragon and I talk about this weird, obscure show that Cartoon Network sometimes like airs like once in a blue moon called Steven Universe. I don't know. I don't know if you've ever heard of it, but once in a while, Dragon and I talk about it. It used to be popular back in the day. I heard once upon a time. Anyways, how are you? How are you, Jacob?
Doing fine.
Cool.
You?
I'm good. I'm good. So today we are talking about DuckTales, the impossible summit of Mount. It's
Neverrest.
Neverrest, right, Neverrest.
Otherwise known as in our circle, Expedition Neverest.
Why isn't this episode called Expedition Neverest? Jacob, it genuinely bothers me just because I honestly think this might be the worst title of an episode we've had so far.
I think they just wanted to sound like more like an adventure title, I guess.
I mean, yeah, certainly. I understand that. It's just a mouthful, though. It's a mouthful. Like, it's literally hard to say.
The Impossible Expedition of Mount Never. The Impossible Summit
See what
of
I
Mount
mean?
Not really that hard to say. The Impossible Summit of Mount Everest.
All right. Anyways, I just think Expedition Neverest. It's like it's Disney, so it's not like they'd sue themselves for using Expedition Everest. Jacob, I love this episode.
Yeah, I mean, like it's finally good to see more Scrooge interacting with the kids.
Mm-hmm. I gotta say, like, I just watched it like about an hour ago, and I have no frame of reference about how anyone else feels about it right now. But as of now, Jacob, I can pretty confidently say just because of the Scrooge of it all, mostly because of the Scrooge of it all, this is probably my favorite episode so far.
I mean, it's actually good to see Scrooge in an adventure-like aspect. I mean, though it wasn't really as adventurous as like the first episode, it has more adventure aspect than the Mummies episode for sure.
Yeah, and certainly more adventure than an episode where they're stuck in a in a casino with an unlikable a-hole the whole time, but I won't get into that.
Like we finally got to see Scrooge more in action, which is really cool, and like actually got to learn a bit about his not so glamorous past.
Jacob, I love Scrooge in this episode. Like, I feel like finally, this is the Scrooge that we got in the pilot where, there's some dark shades to him. Like, you remember how hyped up we were that first time that Scrooge and Donald interacted in the series? How there felt like there was so much tension between them. Like, it's like, it feels so good that we're back to that with him.
Oh, yeah.
But not to say that Scrooge is like overly nefarious this episode. I love his arc this episode. It's very, very satisfying.
And I'll say a bit of a spoiler right now, and say, who else saw the twist coming, by the way?
Yeah, can we talk about that just up top? Because honestly, the ending is sort of like what cemented it. Like, if this wasn't my favorite episode already, when I saw the ending, I was like, oh God, that's great. Oh, I love it. I love it.
Oh yeah, it's like can we talk about like how he was like the Neverest Ninny all along? I mean, I totally saw that coming.
Like, what I love about that ending, Jacob, of course, is that it's such a great representation of of Scrooge's character, where he could have taken the easy way the whole time to technically reach the top of the mountain. He could have literally gone through a portal to go right to the very top. No effort at all. But instead, we get this huge adventure, and it is genuinely a great adventure episode. to reach the top, and it's the effort that counts. And we see Scrooge so painfully close to the top, Jacob, and I felt genuinely like really bad for Scrooge when he couldn't quite get there. You know what I mean? Because it was something that's haunted him for a long time, as we see in this episode, and men have literally died to make this goal happen.
So yeah, it's like including the guy he hired to take him up there, that George Mallory, which is actually based on like actual explorer George Mallory. It's like he's like, if I had a guy if I had a nickel for every time someone cursed me at their last breath, I'd be twice as rich as I already am. I mean, that just reveals like how many people is Scrooge pissed off.
Yeah, quite a few, I am sure.
seems that way. I mean, it just seems pretty interesting, though. I mean, he had no idea about the portals, nonetheless. I mean, though, I wish the portals would have a bit more explanation for being there, but it's not exactly that big of a thing to get worried about, I suppose.
And honestly, I'm kind of fine with the portals not really having an explanation, because to me, it just sort of felt like a nice mystery.
It's like a natural wonder kind of thing.
Exactly. That's what it felt like. Right.
It's like where you don't know why they're there, but they're there.
Jacob, this might sound like a really weird comparison to make, but watching this episode kind of made me feel like I was playing Mario 64.
Yeah, the whole jumping back and forth thing.
Well, not only the jumping back and forth thing, but like a lot of the levels in Mario 64 are kind of like framed around mountains, and there's even a couple levels that are framed around snowy mountains. So yeah, I was definitely getting some Mario 64 vibes with this.
It is an odd comparison, but who might have judged?
I mean, it might just be because for some reason I've been on like a really random kick of watching Mario 64 speedruns, but that's a whole different conversation. Anyways.
I'm a Portal fan, so this kind of reminded me of Portal in a way.
Right.
Well, speaking of Portal, wouldn't it be awesome if you could get like J.K. Simmons in this show?
I don't think it's out of the question at all, because J.K. Simmons definitely has a history with, Disney XD. He has a resume with Disney XD.
Yeah, I mean, so it's entirely possible. I mean, it'd be pretty cool to see him in this.
J.K. Simmons is Duckworth. I'm not even joking. That'd be perfect casting, I think.
That'd be great.
It really would be. I think that'd fit him really well.
I mean, I highly doubt that's going to happen, but it's still.
No, don't splash my dreams, Jacob.
I'm not. I'm just.
They could really build up Duckworth like they built up J.K. Simmons' other character. I won't say exactly who it is for anyone who hasn't seen Gravity Falls, but I digress.
But yeah, so I was just saying that because he's also in Portal, so that's where I got that.
Right.
But like I said, that kind of reminded me of the whole Portal thing.
So another thing I really love about this episode is I feel like most everyone got an arc.
It's like Huey got his with Scrooge. I mean, I really like Huey. Huey was good this episode, but it's kind of like deconstructed his whole obsession with the Junior Woodchucks. It's like he actually used it for like necessity instead of just pure obsession.
So, Jacob, one thing I want to get into, and I don't want to dive too much into this because honestly, I feel like it's sort of a rabbit hole of a conversation right now, but the airing schedule. So one of the interesting things I found out, of course, I think we all know that this episode was pushed back to December because it's a Christmas episode, apparently, because they mentioned Christmas once. They mention it once, so therefore it bugs me, Jacob. It bugs me. Anyways,
yeah.
The reason I'm bringing this up, though, Jacob, is apparently there's a Huey-centric episode that also gets into, like, the Junior Woodchuck thing. Like, it properly introduces the Junior Woodchuck guidebook. And apparently Disney XD just kind of took it out of the episode order because they just didn't, like, they weren't satisfied with. I don't know the whole story behind it, but apparently they essentially thought it was a filler episode, and they were. So essentially that leaves us with this, this lost episode that was like a pivotal piece of storytelling, a pivotal piece of character development on Huey's end. But In spite of all that, I still think that Huey is probably by far the most developed out of the three nephews so far.
Yeah, it seems that way. I mean, like I really liked how I liked his arc in this episode, especially with Scrooge.
Mm-hmm.
It's like he got under Scrooge's skin in this episode.
And also, I think to a certain extent, especially because, I mean, definitely because you see a young Scrooge and they're both wearing red and everything, but you definitely see Huey in this episode kind of as a young Scrooge to a certain extent.
In a way.
Like, even though he's going against what Scrooge wants, it's still like, he's got that sort of like, like spunky spirit about him.
It's like all of them like have like similar aspects to Scrooge. It's like Huey Huey kind of shares like the adventurous aspect. Dewey's like the thrill seeker, and Louie is the one who's obsessed with money.
Right.
It's like they all have like various aspects that connect them to Scrooge in a way.
Uh-huh.
And Donald is has anger issues.
Yep.
Has some deep rooted history with him that we have yet to find out, though most likely involves his sister.
All right. So what do you think of the whole subplot regarding let's see, it's Dewey, right? Yeah, Dewey. Dewey and Webby with the sled.
It's pretty kind of interesting to say the least.
I liked it because it's a very simple story. You know what I mean? It doesn't really require a lot of thinking power to work it in. It's basically just like, all right, they're climbing a mountain. Webby's anxious to slide down it, but Dewey wants to wait until the highest point. It's good stuff. I don't think Webby really overpowers the episode at all. Like she's sort of had a tendency to do like back for a couple episodes, which was nice. She had a couple good moments and. She had that whole subplot. I think in general, it's nice that her whole character arc this season is sort of like experiencing things that she's never gotten to experience before.
And considering that it's kind of funny that she didn't even find through letting that fun at the end.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right. Meh. That was nice. That was a fun little cap on that whole thing. Jacob, I will say the one moment in the episode, it by no means brought the episode down at all, because I still really, really like this episode a lot. But I was a little bit annoyed with Dewey and Webby, just like once they discover the portals, just like, yeah, we're just going to recklessly jump all over the portals that are obviously shaky and dangerous because, it's not like that's unsafe at all.
Yeah.
Obviously Huey calls them on it, and obviously they're just being little kids, but I don't know, that's the one episode, that was the one point of the episode where I was like, all right, maybe tone down the immaturity level.
It is something kids would do, though, so.
I guess so. But, so are you ready to talk about Launchpad? Because, my God, Launchpad has a bonkers subplot this episode.
Oh yeah, that was.
Oh my God, what is up with Launchpad?
I mean, I really like his introduction to this episode, though. I mean, how he like opens the door and it turns out they're already crashed.
I love how Scrooge is like, he doesn't even bat an eye. He's just like, yeah, all right, we're here.
It's like, I think it's like he's so used to it by now he doesn't even care. It's like at least they're acknowledging the whole crash thing again.
Right. I gotta say, Jacob, I do actually really, really appreciate that they're not just leaning into Launchpad where it's like, hey, he's the guy who crashes planes, because that's really, for all intents and purposes, as much as I love Launchpad in the original DuckTales, that's pretty much all his character was good for.
They never really developed him in Darkwing Duck, though.
And he is really the most bonkers out there character in. Well, yeah, that's true. They do kind of redevelop him in Darkwing Duck, but in this one, though, in this series, I really do feel like they've given his personality sort of a major overhaul to a certain extent. Like, it still very much has all the fundamentals of the Launchpad we know and love, but it's much more rooted in sort of like a realistic kind of craziness to a certain extent.
It's like And he definitely doesn't have the same level of intelligence because at least the original Launchpad had like some level of intelligence, even though he crashed a lot. It seems like this one like took a few too many blows to the head when he crashed.
Yeah, but I think by that point though, I definitely think this Launchpad has more dimensions to him than the original did.
Well, yeah, I'm not saying that. I mean, it definitely opens a lot more potential instead of just like
Uh-huh.
the crashing, sometimes snarky kind of pilot that Scrooge or the original Scrooge had.
Right. So, Jacob, do you want to explain the subplot because I don't even know where to begin.
Like apparently, Launch Battle's like wandering around. He gets this comes across, like the whole standard that comes across this shady merchant trying to sell him stuff.
It's so
Like
great.
to cure it. I think it's either snow fever or ice fever. I forget which one.
I think it's ice. It's ice fever. I'm pretty sure.
It's like tells him all these crazy, obviously fake symptoms of ice fever to convince him to buy this obviously shady merchandise which really does nothing.
And it's just like
And
he's obviously like just making it up as he goes along.
it's like an 8 out of 7. Ooh.
And so throughout the rest of the episode, the comedy on Launchpad is just great because Launchpad's just like taking every last word of this guy at total face value.
It's like Louis gave me his corporate corporate card. Like Louis doesn't have a card. Oh, Louis, give me your credit card. Like again, Scrooge really needs to be more careful with his credit card.
Right. Right.
I mean, he used it. I mean, it was used to buy all those burritos in Egypt. Now it's like being used to buy all this stupid equipment. He needs to keep better hands on his card. I mean, sure it's not like it's not probably not losing much in his whole entire wealth, but still.
To be honest with you, I think the wealth that Scrooge mostly cares about is just his money bin.
No, I mean it's probably true, but he still
And
doesn't like losing a lot of
I'm
money.
guessing he could, but this is just me, like, just creating my own headcanon here, all right? So bear with me. Like, I'm guessing he could just, like, siphon any credit card money, any money for credit card bills, like, from one of his many subsidiary companies. I'm getting way too deep into this.
Yeah, it's like, well, who knows? I mean, Scrooge can probably find like, what's a couple $100 for the richest duck in the
That's what I'm
world?
saying. That's what I'm saying. He's not like Jacob. You got to remember, this Scrooge is like he's not like the original Scrooge, and he's also like he's very much not like probably like the most
He's more.
modern, like the most popular like money pincher we have in mainstream cartoons now, which is Mr. Krabs. And of course, Mr. Krabs is just like he will literally go to the ends of the earth to save a penny. So this Scrooge is nothing. He is nowhere near that stingy.
It's like he's more. This Scrooge is like more of an adrenaline junkie more than anything else.
Right, right. Which I really appreciate that about it because, of course, it gets back to the nature of, the comic book and everything, which from the very get go, that was the promise of the show.
The Scrooge original series wouldn't go up the Mount Everest if there wasn't promise of treasure. Here he said, like he openly said, there is no treasure. It's just basically for his.
I love that, Jacob. That's so refreshing to me.
It's like there is no treasure, which basically got Louis out of the picture. and,
God.
Yeah, so and basically and continuing with the whole launchpad thing, they kind of like really clean. I like how it clears up how like Louis basically gets the guy to convince everyone to basically proclaim and basically give up on the fact that it's fake.
Uh-huh.
It's like, I mean, he's like, you saved me, Louis. It's like we treasure down the mountain together. And let's not forget the fact that he tried to keep Louis warm with his sweat.
Oh God, that almost made me gag a little bit in a good way. Like that's almost kind of like an early Ren and Stimpy level of like good gross out humor.
They didn't go into too many detail. They didn't really linger on it.
Yeah, right. But it's just like, oh, you can use your imagination.
Yeah, it's probably more traumatizing for Louis to experience more than us to watch.
Oh man.
Yeah, it's like, I mean, what else can we say about this episode other than its conclusion and everything? I mean, we pretty much said all we can.
Well, like I said, I can't say enough good things about the characterization of Scrooge. I mean, I keep harping on it, but it's just like really, this episode is kind of like basically like I honestly felt like some of the episodes we got, Jacob, were a little. It's not like any episodes besides the whatever the Drake the
How's Lucky Gander,
yeah,
Gladstone Gander?
it's such a bad episode that I've just chosen to forget about it. Like seriously, that episode kind of sticks out like a sore thumb to me, where it's just like, I mean, I'm sure there's like one or two good gags in there that I'm forgetting about, but that episode just overall not great. But this episode is just, it's everything. To me, I feel like this episode is the first time since the pilot that we got literally everything that the show promised us it could be. We have all the characters really richly interacting off each other, though granted, I kind of wish Donald was involved. Uh
Yeah, we need more Donald. He was like a major selling point for us.
that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. It's like a major selling point was that Donald was going to be on these adventures, and there's no explanation for why he's not on these adventures.
Well, admittedly, here, I mean, like as we said before, he probably would have dragged it down a bit.
Yeah. And honestly, I feel like that's kind of a nitpick. Basically, Jacob, like long story short here, just to kind of wrap it up, I feel like this episode it's essentially a quintessential sort of like, this is exactly what an episode of DuckTales would be like. You know what I mean? This is like, it's so in tune with what the original show was like, and yet it's plussing from the original show, which is exactly what a good reboot should do. A good reboot should essentially take the foundation of what the original was and build on it. And this episode just did that so well for me because it's adding layers to all these characters. In a way, Jacob, like plot wise, in terms of like the big mysteries and overarching, character development and everything. I mean, I guess we get some good development with Scrooge, but for all intents and purposes, this episode is sort of filler when it comes to, like the overarching, like the big dangling stuff, like, the magic of it all and whatnot. Not saying that Magica is the only dangling plot thread, but
And not to mention Della.
right. Jacob, this might be the first episode to not have any sort of cliffhanger,
In a way.
which I really appreciate. I really appreciate that for a change because it's nice that we get a really, really satisfying artistic end to the episode that really wraps up the, all the stories and all the character development and isn't just like a sting of like, oh, hey, by the way, this thing that you remember from the show is going to eventually be in the reboot.
It was
Not
pretty.
that
I
I'm
mean,
complaining about that stuff because it is a good way to draw hype. I mean, you know me, I was hyped for the Gizmo Duck of it all when we got that, when we got that episode. But
let's see how it goes forward from here. I mean, when is the next episode coming?
your guess is as good as mine, buddy.
I mean, there hasn't been an episode confirmed.
No, as of now, I really don't think we know anything about the next episode. Folks, correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, but as of now, and Jacob, of course, the only reason why we got this episode when we did is because Disney XD is like, oh, it's a winter episode. We have to air it in December, or else we really wouldn't be getting any new episodes until 2018. So as of now, I feel like the show is going to go back on a hiatus, but Star is not on a hiatus, Jacob, and we will be talking about Star very soon. We'll be talking about that tomorrow. I'm not sure how many new episodes we have after the 2 episodes we got, or what the situation is with that. Of course, Jacob, it is the winter season, so many of these shows are going to be on hiatus. Of course, we're waiting for Big Hero 6, which just dropped the pilot movie. We're waiting for that to come back. But Jacob, I feel like we'll have a lot to cover in terms of animated programming in the meantime, because I definitely want to go back and start reviving our Discovery DuckTales series. I think that would be a really nice thing to kind of start doing again, especially because now we've gotten a lot of familiarity with ourselves about what this new DuckTales series is like. And honestly, I feel like, especially with this episode, since this episode is such a good example of like, like having the tone and feel and structure of an original DuckTales episode, but plussing it, I feel like it'd be a really good time to start examining some of those earlier episodes again. But before we do that, Jacob, I feel like one of the things we really need to do to kind of get the ball rolling on rediscovering old DuckTales episodes is really do a deep dive into the DuckTales movie, which is honestly, Jacob, kind of a bucket list podcast that I've been wanting to do for a long time. I love the DuckTales movie. You got Christopher Lloyd as a Disney villain. I mean, what else do you want?
Other than Judge Doom.
Well, that's true. And a fully animated Disney villain, not just like, remember me, Eddie, when I killed your brother? Not that kind of animated.
No, but
I talk just like this.
But yeah, I would be up for that.
And Jacob, any final thoughts?
No, I mean, I did like this episode, and like I hope we get more of Scrooge's unscrupulous, maybe even dark past.
Yeah, like I said, folks, I really feel like this episode hit a high point for me with DuckTales, pun semi-intended.
You mean so far it's the summit?
Yeah, right. Because like I said, I keep repeating myself here a little bit, but I feel like this is everything I kind of wanted this reboot to be like, because it takes the foundation of the original series and builds upon it in a really satisfying way. And if more episodes of the series are like this, I'm on board. I really love the adventure quality of it. It's great. So, all right, folks. Well, like I said, we'll be back to cover Star vs. Evil. We'll be doing more old DuckTales stuff. Look for that very soon. Of course, Jacob, we're going to get a plethora of Disney stuff. Star Wars just around the corner. So you like Star Wars? Anyways, going off tangent, folks. Thanks for watching. Have a good one.
Bye. Woohoo.
Seriously, this isn't a Christmas episode.
Woohoo.